Peter Reid has been sacked, some more interesting ins and outs for England and the best of Blackburn-Everton. The panel will pack it in to the Premiership on Monday after the news.
He stood accused of murder.
You gunned down more than 80 people.
I think they ought to crucify you.
The ITV movie premiere, Rules of Engagement, Tuesday at 9.
So the Premiership on Mondays in half an hour, then Champions League weeklies at midnight. But now on ITV1, the news.
Soham sealed off as jury retraces Holly and Jessica's last known steps. The royal dilemma, Charles plots his next move. He's back, can Lord Saatchi do for Howard what he did for Thatcher? And situation vacant, again, Leeds in free fall as Reid is sacked.
Players at odds with the manager at odds with the board, the board at odds with the creditors, it's just chaos, isn't it?
The ITV News with Mark Austin.
Good evening. Through deserted streets, the jury in the Holly and Jessica murder trial today retraced the girls' last known steps. The Old Bailey judge took the jurors to Soham because he wanted them to see for themselves where the two girls lived and where, according to the prosecution, they died. That, the prosecution say, was in the house and at the hands of Ian Huntley. Our correspondent Geraint Vincent was one of the few journalists allowed to join their sad journey.
This was an extraordinary day in Soham, and there was an extraordinary atmosphere as the jury walked the streets. There was quite literally no one around. The roads had been sealed off, and having been told of the jury's visit well in advance, residents had either gone away for the day or stayed indoors.
The Old Bailey's #1 court convened in Soham this morning. Unaccompanied by the defendants, judge, jury and barristers came here to retrace what are said to be Holly and Jessica's last known movements. Through the deserted streets of Soham, the jurors began their walk, as this ITV News graphic shows retracing what the jury heard were the girls' final steps on that summer evening 15 months ago. They began outside Holly's house, from where the prosecution say the two girls set off after a family barbecue. They then walked up an alleyway onto Sand Street, heading for the War Memorial. They then doubled back on themselves, as the girls are said to have done, walking down a lane to the sports centre. This is where CCTV cameras on the wall of the building filmed the last known pictures of Holly and Jessica. The jurors walked across College Green and up College Road before doubling back once more. Just around the corner is #5 College Close, where Ian Huntley lived and where the prosecution say the girls were murdered. They spent 15 minutes inside the house and were told it looked very different today from when the girls died. All the fittings and floorboards were stripped out during the police inquiry. Emerging from Huntley's home, the jury walked across the grounds of Soham Village College. They were told last week that this was where the girls' clothing was found, partly burned in a dustbin inside a storage hangar.
This visit is a very important process. Each juror has already received bundles of photographs and maps, but to make sure they are as familiar as possible with the physical geography of this case, there's no substitute for coming to have a look themselves. Tomorrow the jurors will be taken to Lakenheath and the place where the girls' bodies were discovered. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Soham.
Prince Charles is considering his options tonight, none of them very appealing, on dealing with those rumours. He's been speaking to his advisers about whether to speak out about allegations that we are still unable to report for legal reasons. But as our royal correspondent Tom Bradby explains, the option he may favour is saying nothing.
Who would want to be in public life? The man born to be king now hears not the call of history, but the sniggers of whispered innuendo. What a series of conversations to have with your sons. Those who know him say the pressure must be very unpleasant.
I don't know how he stands up to the hammering he gets in public. I genuinely don't. When you think of the entertainers and the celebrities and people in the public eye who've been hammered for a while and they've cracked up, they've taken to alcoholism, they've taken to drugs, they've had no life at all. He's had it for decade after decade. There's a little withdrawal and then back it comes. Every full moon, the tide comes in of gossip and innuendo and criticism. He's become the whipping boy of the monarchy, and I genuinely don't know how psychologically he stands up to it.
So what options does Prince Charles have? However dangerous it might be, he could go to court.
At the moment, we've got nudge, nudge, wink, wink kind of journalism. What we need are hard facts. And what should happen is that newspapers should be prepared to put the imprimatur of their headline, the editor's name behind a particular story, if they think it's true. If they think it's true, they take the consequences. They publish and be damned.
There's speculation he'll go public with a television interview, but this is very high risk. His admission of adultery was considered a disaster last time. Of course, he could effectively go to ground, say nothing more and sit it out.
I think he should now keep quiet. He's said what needed to be said. These allegations aren't true. He doesn't need to say any more. The British people will, I'm sure, make their minds up that these allegations aren't true.
Whatever happens, Prince Charles is in a position few would envy. This may be a controversial view tonight, but it's feasible that this all ends perfectly well for Prince Charles, with people feeling that he's been given an unwarranted kicking and now needs to be given a break. But in order to get to that point, the public need to feel that they've weighed the evidence and concluded that there is nothing to these allegations. Tom Bradby, ITV News at St James's Palace.
He's back. The man who helped get Margaret Thatcher elected was today the surprise member of Michael Howard's slimmed-down shadow cabinet. Lord Saatchi, advertising guru and Treasury Minister in the Lords, is the party's joint chairman. But can he do for Mr Howard what he did for Lady T? Here's our political editor, Nick Robinson.
Who's the new Tory star? The man to change their fortunes? Clark? Portillo? Haig? No, go even further back.
Lord Saatchi, you were responsible for selling Margaret Thatcher. How are you going to sell Michael Howard?
That's all going to evolve. I think Michael Howard, though, doesn't need much selling. He does it rather well himself.
Margaret Thatcher's favourite ad man is a man of few public words, but the Tories' new chairman has always had other ways of communicating.
It's not that they don't care about the unemployed. They do. And it's not that they don't mean well for our health service or our old people. Of course they do.
I don't think it's about selling personalities of Michael Howard or the shadow cabinet. What Morris has done, what his experience is not only bring passion to politics and excitement to politics, but to sell substance, in other words, policies.
Saatchi is the most surprising new member of a surprisingly small new Tory team. Michael Howard's shadow cabinet is half the size of the old one. Just enough men for a football team. Oh, and one woman too. Theresa May, sacked as Tory chairman, now does two jobs, environment and transport. New boy, pro-European David Curry, does even more. Scotland, Wales, regions, local government, whilst his neighbour Tim Yeo has to take on health and education. Oliver Letwin only has Gordon Brown to shadow at the Treasury, whilst David Davis takes on David Blunkett at the Home Office. A team that got this surprise endorsement from Ken Clarke, who along with ex-leaders Major, Haig and Duncan Smith are offering to advise and to help.
What I can do is offer every support to my old mate, Michael Howard, and actually give him my advice, to discuss tactics with him.
Today showed there's no one face, no Tory magic dust to turn round the party's fortunes, but for once in more than a decade, the party's big hitters are pulling in the same direction. For now, at least. Nick Robinson, ITV News, Westminster.
The Prime Minister says he's prepared for protests against President Bush's visit to Britain next week. But in a speech tonight, he said those opposed to the war in Iraq should remember that without it, Saddam Hussein would still be in power.
I say to those who will protest when President Bush comes, protest if you will, that is your democratic right. Attack the decision to go to war, though have the integrity to realise that without it, these Iraqis now tasting freedom would still be under the lash of Saddam, his sons and their henchmen.
If it doesn't already, the water in your taps could soon have fluoride added to protect your teeth. MPs decided tonight that health authorities should be able to tell water companies to put fluoride in. But the decision has left a bitter taste. Some opponents are calling it compulsory medication. Lauren Taylor reports.
The debate has been rather like old-fashioned teeth pulling, long drawn out and painful. The majority of dentists and health professionals believe that adding fluoride to the water supply is a simple, effective method of reducing tooth decay. Those opposed argue it's a dangerous form of mass medication. Tonight's vote in Parliament gives local health authorities the power to order water companies to add fluoride to supplies. About 5 million people in Britain already drink fluoridated water under local agreements. Those in favour say tonight's decision will bring huge benefits.
We know that fluoride, where it's been put into the water supply at the appropriate levels, particularly in large cities like Birmingham, which have had fluoride for 30 years, the teeth of successive generations of children are significantly better than other parts.
But opponents say too much fluoride can cause dental fluorosis, a defect in tooth enamel, and are appalled by the prospect of fluoridation of water becoming widespread.
It's an absolute disaster for public health in England because, first of all, it's illegal, it's a poison, it shouldn't be put in the water supply, it's not a registered medicine, so it shouldn't be administered to the public, it's a breach of human rights, and it's going to poison children.
So in future, the water we drink may routinely contain fluoride, but even those who support the measure say that people will have a say over whether they really want it. And given the strength of feeling this issue has generated, it seems the battle over simple tap water will run and run. Lauren Taylor, ITV News.
There's more to come on tonight's ITV News, including the primary school head teacher accused of slapping a 6-year-old girl pupil. Goodbye Peter Reid, but the nightmare goes on for Leeds United. And remembered tonight, the war dead who still lie in Flanders fields. Those stories and more in just a minute.
Relax, this Ferguson digital receiver with up to 30 digital channels free is now half price, $39.99. Half price?
Here's one I recorded earlier.
Recordable DVD player, $199.99, now at Sainsbury's.
Introducing the UK's fastest water filter and kettle in one. The Filter Rapide from Morphy Richards. Filters faster, improves the taste.
Maybe I'm a banker who's completely obsessed. Got a little something that's bound to impress. This current account pays a higher amount of extraordinary interest. Extra, extra, I know you want more. I'll give you something extra when you walk through my door. Extra, extra, though I cannot deny. Terms and conditions apply.
It's easy to switch to the current account that pays 25 times more interest than these banks. Halifax, always giving you extra.
Yeah, man! Are you listening, my island people? Feel the spirit of wonder, the positive vibration, the rhythm of one nation. Hey, come and feel the spirit of Jamaica. I say, let's get together and we're gonna feel alright. Yeah, yeah.
Introducing the Kodak EasyShare camera and printer dock. An incredibly easy way to get real Kodak photos straight from your digital camera. Truce.
Oh, I'm worn out.
I can't believe we ran 4 miles. I'm so proud of us.
Baileys, any excuse. The FC UK Glow Ladies Gift Pack. Yet another gift in our 3 for 2 mix and match.
Love, love. There are many ways you can find love, actually. Love, love. Hug special jars of Nescafe Gold Blend and you can win a romantic year instantly.
So what are we doing next weekend?
This? All over again? Design your perfect year worth £50,000 from exotic holidays, weekend breaks, or just spend quality time in a tent with your insane boyfriend. Find romance with Nescafe Gold Blend and Love Actually.
Bordeaux. Experience a world of finesse.
I tell Sky Plus what telly I want to watch, and it just stores it. There's no fiddling around with tapes or anything like that. I don't know how they do it.
Welcome back. A primary school head, once described as an exceptional teacher, was accused in court today of slapping a disruptive 6-year-old girl on the face, not once but twice. A teacher and nursery nurse gave evidence against Pamela Mitchell-Hill. The child had just arrived at the school after being expelled from her previous one. Joyce Ohaja reports.
Head teacher Pamela Mitchell-Hill arriving at Worley Magistrates Court in the West Midlands, where she's on trial for assault, accused of slapping a 6-year-old girl whose behaviour had disrupted a class. The incident's alleged to have taken place in April at Crockett's Lane Primary School in Smethwick, one of the top 200 schools in the country. The child had been at the school just 4 days, having been expelled from her previous school. Newly qualified teacher Victoria Sargent told the court the head teacher was called to help after the pupil began disrupting a numeracy class. She said she felt sick when she saw Mitchell-Hill slap the pupil and that the head teacher's response was inappropriate. Another witness, nursery nurse Debbie Banner, said, "I saw her raise her right hand and slap the girl on the left cheek twice. There was no space between the two slaps. It was a matter of seconds. The pupil was crying. She was asking for her mum. She was sobbing. She had her arms over her face." But 50-year-old Mrs. Mitchell-Hill maintains she only turned the girl's head to get her attention, and she denies assaulting the child. The trial continues. Joyce Ohaja, ITV News.
An investigation has begun into how a teenage girl fell out of the back of an ambulance onto a motorway and died. According to police, the 16-year-old was on her way to hospital with injuries that were not life-threatening. It was while the ambulance was on the M5 in Gloucestershire that the accident happened. British Airways profits have fallen badly. Over the past 6 months, BA only managed to make a fifth of the profit it made during the same period last year, just £60 million. It says it'll carry on cutting costs. And the Countess of Wessex is spending another night more than 30 miles from her new baby. Today, though, the proud father visited both of them at their respective hospitals. Prince Edward said his new daughter, who still hasn't got a name, is tiny but beautiful. Now, who on earth would want the job of manager at Leeds United? They have sky-high debts, a tumbling share price, and of course they're rock bottom in the Premiership. Tonight, for the 4th time in less than 2 years, there is a vacancy. Peter Reid got the sack today and the search is on for his successor. Tim Rogers reports from Leeds.
They were 6 goals of humiliation, one after another rubbing salt into the wound, and with each goal the manager's grip on Leeds United slipped away. It was a match Leeds had to win, but the debacle at Portsmouth has cost Peter Reid his job.
I'm not one who walks away. When I got the job, I knew it was going to be difficult. Didn't think it'd be this difficult.
For many, a thankless task. The financial crisis threatening the club is arguably a bigger problem than their league position. Leeds are now £78 million in debt, and it's perhaps surprising that they paid £4 million to David O'Leary when he was sacked 18 months ago. Terry Venables got a £2 million payoff when he left last season. And even Peter Reid might be cheered up with a golden handshake of £850,000, which the club can ill afford. And the collapsing shares say it all.
There's no value in the shares. There could be some value in the company if they're to retain the Premiership status, but it's looking increasingly difficult that the team's going to even stay in the Premier League.
In fact, the bookmakers say the odds are heavily stacked against Leeds retaining their Premiership status, and that's left the fans fuming.
Players at odds with the manager at odds with the board, the board at odds with the creditors, it's just chaos, isn't it? And it needs sorting out.
But who's the right man for the job? No money, low morale, and a club that's sinking fast. The omens aren't good, and the worst may still be to come. Tim Rogers, ITV News at Ellen Road.
Well, the sack obviously hasn't dampened Peter Reid's enthusiasm for the game. He was at Ewood Park tonight to watch his old club Everton lose at Blackburn. After Marcus Babbel's opener, Dwight York made it 2-0 with just 12 minutes gone. Thomas Radzinski pulled a goal back for Everton just after half-time, but Rovers hung on to win and pull away from Leeds at the bottom of the Premiership. Finally, they fell in battle more than 80 years ago, but today, underneath the blades of the bulldozers, the remains of 7 First World War soldiers have been found where a Belgian motorway is due to be built. A reminder on the eve of Armistice Day of the suffering and sacrifice of millions of British soldiers. Juliette Bremner now in Ypres on the memories among the poppies.
Standing proudly at the Menin Gate in Ypres, Arthur Hailstrap remembers hundreds of fallen friends. Here their names live on, but they have no grave.
At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
At 105, he's one of the few still alive with personal memories of those who fought and died in the Flanders mud. Fresh evidence of the extraordinary sacrifice is being dug up a few miles from the memorial. But the trenches and the human remains they contain are threatened by a new motorway. Visitors like Helen Mahon, whose great-uncle's still missing, are disgusted by the suggestion.
Somewhere in this area around here, we've come along by chance this morning. So it's very emotional for me, knowing that there's a body up there that might be him.
Extending the A19 might benefit the local economy, but it's impossible to find a route that would leave every unmarked grave undisturbed. So far, the remains of 7 men have been uncovered in these few trenches. But along the entire proposed site of the road, there could be hundreds, possibly even thousands. Campaigners say to go ahead would be to tarmac over history. For 2 long years, this was the front line between Ypres and Passchendaele. The losses are almost unimaginable. Preserving these battlefield burial sites may help to keep the memory alive. Juliette Bremner, ITV News, Ypres.
Memories of the Great War. I'll be here again with a reminder of tonight's headlines in just a few minutes' time. But first, let's find out what's been going on where you are by joining ITV newsrooms right around the UK.
Good evening, I'm Ronke Phillips. This is London Tonight. First, the controversial issue of children and guns. Last week, we reported on a 13-year-old Lambeth boy who's obsessed with his replica weapon and is determined to own the real thing. That sparked an impassioned response from a mother in Essex who also has a 13-year-old boy fascinated by firearms. Young Richard Bass has around 30, but his mum says she knows they won't lead him into trouble. Sarah Smith has more.
13-year-old Richard Bass has an obsession. He likes guns, lots of them. The garden of his Essex home resembles a military camp. He's also a member of his local gun club where he takes shooting lessons. But Richard believes his supervised gun use is different from youngsters who brandish their replica weapons on the streets.
Well, it depends with the person holding it or in charge of it, because if you're trained properly and you know how to use it, it's obviously not such a danger.
Last week we spoke to a teenager from Lambeth who told us he carries his toy Uzi for protection. Richard isn't allowed to take his weapons outside his home, and his mother believes her son's attitude to guns is safe and responsible.
We've got the 303 Enfield rifle here, which is deactivated, that cannot shoot anything. You have the SA-80 here, which is, again, a replica that shoots BBs, which is the little round plastic pellets. But I won't give them to him and he doesn't shoot them.
Last year there were almost 5,000 gun incidents in London, many of them involving replica weapons. A parliamentary group of MPs has now called for a ban on all imitation guns. Both Richard and the boy from Lambeth received their replica guns from their mothers. Presents some believe they could end up regretting.
If it's really going to be guns that gives the children the only buzz they get, where does that lead us? So I think caution with guns, it's something that parents really do need to look at with great control, and let's find other positive things for children to get that buzz out of. Really, there are better things than to practice killing people.
This is Sarah Smith for London Tonight.
There was a shocking and timely reminder of the dangers of clubbing today, as it emerged that 1 in 25 drinks tested at a night spot in Essex had been tampered with. Police carried out the operation in Chelmsford as part of a drug rape awareness campaign in the run-up to the Christmas party season. It thought traces of the drug GHB were found, and even evidence of a horse sedative. Our crime correspondent Marcus Powell reports.
Girls may feel there's safety in numbers when they're out in the clubs and pubs, but they can't be certain. Essex police tested 200 drinks in a Chelmsford nightclub this weekend and found 8 contained traces of illegal drugs. They said they were amazed by the results. Liquid GHB, tranquilizer ketamine and traces of benzos found in so-called date rape drugs were all discovered, suggesting several people were spiking women's drinks.
I think it is an uncommonly high amount that has happened in that club, but I still think that it definitely is a growing problem.
The test done so far on the drugs found a simple one, so forensic analysis will be needed before the police can be certain exactly what they're dealing with. In the meantime, women must be aware.
One of my mates got spiked and it was unbelievable. She had like 1 glass of cider. She was all over the place. She was on the floor and everything.
I'm conscious when I'm drinking bottles. I've always got my thumb over the top if I'm in a nightclub.
Essex police have a campaign based on the character Spike the Hedgehog to warn women to think before they drink, and the Lamplugh Trust advises on precaution against drug rape.
If there is a drug in your drink, then you will feel considerably drunk very, very quickly, and very soon after you will feel very disorientated and not really know what's going on around you. If you feel this way, then obviously get your trusted friend to take you home straight away.
As the party season approaches, the message from police is quite simple. For women, don't accept drink from strangers unless you see those drinks being poured, and don't leave your drink unattended unless it's being looked after by someone you trust. This is Marcus Powell for London Tonight.
An inquest has heard a distressing account of the moment a crane came crashing to the ground, killing 3 workmen. Peter Clark, Michael Whittard and Martin Burgess died when the crane plunged 450 feet in May 2000. They were working on the HSBC Tower when the disaster happened. The inquest at St Pancras Coroner's Court is expected to last several days. Ken Livingstone ended months of speculation over his mayoral future today by confirming he would like to stand in next year's election, but as the official Labour candidate. There is one obstacle though, Nicky Gavron. Mr Livingstone's former deputy is Labour's official candidate and insists she can't be bought off. Millennium Dome will host one of Europe's biggest Christmas events. It'll house theme park rides, a temporary ice rink and a traditional German market when Winter Wonderland 2003 opens on December the 6th. Organisers are expecting around 250,000 visitors to the Greenwich attraction. Finally, the Home Office has revealed that policing Davy Blaine's 44-day starvation stunt cost more than £64,000, but the bill doesn't include the expense of supervising the final day, when the US entertainer came out of his glass box over the Thames at Tower Bridge. Over half the cost is expected to be met by a television company involved. And that's it for the moment. Now back to the ITV News and Mark Austin. Good morning.
Hello, tonight's main stories again. The jury in the Holly and Jessica murder trial were today taken to Soham to retrace the girls' last known steps. Prince Charles has been consulting his advisors on how to deal with rumours about his private life. And Maurice Saatchi, whose advertising slogans helped elect Mrs Thatcher, is the Tory party's new joint chairman. And that's the news. Over on the ITV News channel next, the Tonight programme, Baghdad 6 months after the end of the war. But from me and the rest of the team, good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by PowerGen. PowerGen. Power in good hands.
Good evening. A changeable week ahead. Some rain for us all, some sunshine for us all, but hardly any frost. It looks pretty mild for the next few days, and there's certainly no danger of frost tonight. Instead, we have to watch out for mist and fog, dense fog patches in the eastern half of Britain overnight tonight. In the west, freshening winds, no fog for you, but outbreaks of rain coming along later in the night. And then tomorrow, a dangerously foggy start on the roads, I think, in central and eastern parts. It will gradually thin out through the day. You may see a little bit of hazy sunshine in the east through the afternoon. In the west, though, you'll have that advancing band of cloud and rain and freshening winds too. The east staying dry until tomorrow night probably, when the rain finally reaches you. A relatively mild day tomorrow in spite of the advancing cloud and rain. Top temperatures around 12 or 13. Good night.
Powergen. Power in good hands.